So guys, in this video I'll be covering the new ships from the 2026 Lunar New Year event. A major event for the Northern Parliament has already been announced for the end of the month, so this time we're only getting 2 new ships and 2 new retrofits along with some very nice skins. There's no English data mine for this event, but it doesn't seem like it will be necessary. Let's start with the new heavy cruiser, Chong Wu. I summarized the important parts of her kit on screen here. You should be able to see her full skills in game at this point if they're not up on the wiki already. She has this mechanic in her first skill, which grants raw jade and fine jade statuses, and has the potential to massively increase the damage output of your entire fleet. When she sinks an enemy ship, the entire fleet gains a stack of raw jade, and if someone else sinks an enemy ship, only that other ship which dealt the final blow will gain a stack of raw jade. Raw jade stacks up to 10 times, granting 1% damage increase per stack. When any ship reaches 10 stacks of raw jade, they will gain the fine jade status, increasing their crit rate by 20% and crit chance by 40%. For Dragon Emperor ship, the buff is further increased to a total of 30% crit rate and 60% crit damage. Finally, if there are at least 3 Dragon Emperor ships in the fleet, she starts the battle fully stacked, giving herself the 10% damage bonus as well as the massive crit buffs. Now, while this skill has a lot of potential, increasing the output of your entire fleet by more than almost all other Vanguard ships when fully stacked, there are some obvious limitations. First of all, there needs to be a minimum of 10 enemies that can be defeated in battle to stack up the buffs for the rest of the fleet, which rules her out of all the meta fights, Operation Siren boss fights, EX fights, challenge mode, you get the idea. Second, you really want Chong Wu to get the last hits so that the entire fleet gains stacks of raw jade, as opposed to just a single ship at a time, but that's very hard to guarantee, especially if you're not running her with 2 other Dragon Emperor ships, so that she can start off the battle having the damage buffs already. In practice, her massive buffs will only be possible in campaign, and likely not for the entire fleet all at once. I would imagine that your strongest main fleet ship will likely take most of the kills, making them even stronger. One way to potentially increase her effectiveness is to sortie her with Yatsen and Penghai, for example, 2 really tanky vanguards who don't do a whole lot of damage, leaving Chong Wu to have the best chance at securing kills, at least among the vanguard ships, giving you a better chance at reaching the fine jade buff for the whole fleet. This vanguard fleet would be severely lacking in anti-air though, as Chong Wu herself is another one of those Dragon Emperor ships that don't have an entire slot, making it less than ideal for the very endgame chapters. It's also possible that we'll get a fight that just happens to summon a ton of easy to kill adds, in which case she ends up being core, similar to how Yorktown meta just happens to require you to have more than 6 units on the field to deal extra damage to her, making ships that summon additional units very desirable out of nowhere. Despite the drawbacks, I much prefer this type of approach, having a kit that is quite restrictive but incredibly potent if the conditions are met, as opposed to a ship with good stats that is inferior to other ships with slightly better stats in every way. I have faith that she'll get a chance to shine someday. I also really like her design, particularly the hairstyle, ornaments, and her face, so I personally don't really mind that there are only 2 new ships since there's at least one that I really like. We're also starting to see some of the negative impacts of keeping a fixed quota per event after all these years, with the new Valentine's event changes that seem to have been poorly received by most of the community. I personally choose a different ship every single year, so I'll still be getting quote-unquote new messages, so I'm less affected by the change, but I can also understand how players who are dedicated to one ship feel let down by this new change. Back to Chong Wu, she also has a second skill that gives her some defensive buffs, and also fires a barrage every 15 seconds, which seems to fire an additional time for each ship in the fleet that has fine jade, up to a maximum of 6 times. At this point, I don't yet know the numbers on the barrage, but I'd imagine it would be quite strong if it were to activate 6 times. But if it does get to that point, your main fleet ships will have the damage and crit buffs from her first skill, which will make much more of a difference than her own personal damage. You can find her stats on the Chinese wiki. The important ones are 4.9k HP at level 125, 78 evasion, and a decent 54 luck, so just by stats and a minor damage reduction buff from her second skill, her survivability will be sufficient, but nothing special. The other new ship is Hai Cho. She's an SR ship with pretty low stats. She has a skill that poisons the lowest HP enemy with a weak damage over time effect, and that's about it gameplay-wise. And then finally, we have the two new retrofits for Yingsui and Xiaoho. Both of them got similar retrofit skills, giving them some small buffs and a barrage, which in all likelihood won't make them a lot stronger than they already were. It's only really going to be a noticeable change for players who are using them before anyway, because they like them as characters. I was expecting Chong Wu this year, so I'm a little bit bummed out, although they are quite popular, so these retrofits are not too surprising. Hopefully next year will be the year. As for the new skins, I just want to highlight Shinano and FDGs. It seems that the real Shinano has returned, as you can tell by her lying down on a bed. In case you didn't know, Shinano is too heavy and weak at the same time to stand up, so she can only lie down and roll around. If she needs to get around to places, she'll use her magic powers and just simply fly. I'll be getting this one for the reasons circled in red. Next up is the new FDG skin. I guess some people are into the whole Dommy Mommy thing, but I'm not into it at all, so I obviously have zero interest in the skin and won't be buying it. I might not even use the rental tickets on it. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this update. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.